We're all here. All right. Good evening, everyone. It is now 4:30 p.m., and we are the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea City Council. Today is February 10th, 2025, and I will call this special meeting to order. Nova, could we get a roll call, please?
Sure. Councilmember Barron?
Here.
Councilmember Booter?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Delves?
Here.
Councilmember Dramoff?
Here.
Mayor Byrne?
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. We'll begin the first and only item on tonight's agenda, receive status report and provide policy guidance on the Carmel Police Department Project. Chip, would you like to start this item off?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council and members of the public. Thank you for coming out today. This is, I don't know what meeting number this is for this project, but we've been working on it for some time. And I'm grateful that the mayor and council called this meeting. It's formal in the sense that we're going to receive a report from Chief Tomasi, and we're going to get input from Fred Muir, who's done these projects before, and he works with us. The project architect is here. You received a report about a month ago on the homework assignment that the previous city council had given us to look at this project. And I think that we're at somewhat of a crossroads, and I think that the chief will tell you about where we've been, the questions that remain, and what we're looking for today is some direction from council. What would you like us to look at next? And we've laid out a series of options for you. As I said, this is a project that's been kicked around for a while. I don't think anyone in the community disagrees that we need to do something with the police department building. It is connected, both physically, structurally, and from the mechanical systems standpoint with the Public Works project. And I can answer any questions about why we had to incorporate elements of the Public Works facility into this scope and design. So I think I'll stop there and turn it over to Chief Tomasi, but please, council, feel free to stop us and ask questions as we march through the presentation, and then we definitely want to hear from the public on their perspective of how far we've come, or how far we haven't come in some cases, and then again get their perspective on what the next steps are for this very, very important building. In my mind, this is the #1 project facing the city. It should be our highest priority, and I hope you agree with me. Thank you.
And for those of you in the public, please write down if you can, but keep your questions in mind, because we don't intend to stop you from asking questions right now, but we just want to get started with the council first, and then we'll include you in your comments and questions.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Thank you, Chip, for that wonderful intro. You took my first slide away. We really appreciate you holding this meeting to help give staff direction on where we're headed with the police building project. You have all your staff directors here, as well as Chip and Assistant City Administrator Brandon Swanson. Fred Mears here, and also the architect for Indigo, John Hammond's here to answer any questions or provide any input you may need as we continue this discussion tonight. So tonight is the status report on the police building project, but we're also seeking some policy guidance on key project aspects that were given to us previously. 3 of those are, we're really looking for validation or amendment of the prior council guidance that was given to us, the functional program needs for the police and public works building, and then the scope of necessary repairs and code upgrades. For background on this, just going back 1 month to January 7th, the council received its initial briefing on the police department project. There were several questions raised by both council and the public regarding the size, scope, site, and costs associated with this project. There were also questions regarding the interpretation of the former council's policy decision. This meeting is structured to provide the council with the opportunity to provide updated guidance where necessary. The most fundamental guidance that needs to be validated is the overall objective of the project. Currently, the staff and design team are focused on a project that accomplishes the following. And it was to develop a new upgraded police and public works facilities that meet the requirements of law, building codes, and functionality that the community expects and is required to provide to assure public safety, officer safety, worker safety, and expected public services now and into the future. Again, a little more background. This is a building that was completed in 1968, and it currently doesn't meet both safety and legal standards for occupancy. This discussion regarding these issues was first raised in 2017 and has been an ongoing topic of various councils. This became the previous council's top priority in 2022 to address the legal safety and security issues. The original priority for council was to focus on police safety and security upgrades. But as more work was completed, including the conditions report, this project developed into a full remodel of the entire building, including public works. The result of that conditions report, which is attached to this agenda, led to the realization that the building was in far worse condition than expected. Further complicating the issue was the building being shared by both Public Works and police, including a shared system such as roof, HVAC, and electrical systems, all which had reached the end of life and beyond. The realization became apparent that simple repairs to improve just security and safety concerns for the police department really wasn't realistic. At the July 2024 meeting, council elected to abandon further work on exploring a potential new location for the police department and focus on the existing site with only exploring a remodel of the existing building. The direction provided to staff included to abandon the idea of building a new police station on another site, to maximize the use of existing site to accommodate all current required police programs as a priority and public works programs as space was available. Consider program growth potential to provide 50-year building functionality, and as a byproduct of those decisions, City Council direction was to also identify public works function that could not be accommodated on site. So we have some questions, hopefully, that we can work through tonight for council to help staff and our project team move forward. The first question is, does council wish to amend the current guidance given to staff, which again was to develop a new upgraded police and public works facility that meets the requirements of the law, building codes, and functionality that the community expects and is required to provide to assure public safety, officer safety, worker safety, and expected public services now and into the future. 2, should the project scope address only today's required needs or plan for future flexibility? There are several considerations to be made before the city takes this approach, which we are happy to elaborate on with this team that you have before you. But there are 2 major concerns with number 2 is that, A, there's a lack of remaining funds to properly address all the immediate needs. We only have so much in this budget, and we could not do all the repairs for what money is left. The second part of that is the conditions report, which we completed, really places the city on notice. We have some serious deficiencies and safety concerns that have to be addressed. Not want, they have to be addressed. Number 3 on this is further justification needed for the Police and Public Works program analysis that we completed in 2023 and through 2024. If so, again, we're all here to help have that discussion regarding needs and space that each department needs. And the 4th, and I promise last one, is, does council require an in-depth discussion on the current building deficiency, code compliance, and liability issues? Again, the conditions report's attached to the staff report, and we're prepared to go through the report to identify the deficiencies for the council if that's your desire. Over the past several meetings, the cost estimates for this project have exceeded the $30 million amount. That's the number that's going around. As mentioned at the January 7th meeting, reliable estimates for projects, they can't even be developed until all the design disciplines have had an opportunity to be completed and the concept design work is done. Only then would we be able to provide a better cost estimate. But again, we started with $30 to $40 million on this project, so that's the number that everybody's aware of. So in summary on this, we're seeking council direction on the police building project. What we have learned over the past 2.5 years is there is no low-cost solution to fixing the building. It's too far gone. We need to invest some money in this building to fix it. Depending on council's decision tonight, we will need to update the scope of work for Indigo to amend their contract. As of today, we would need to return to council with an amended contract, which we're estimating right now is about $334,000 to complete the project, where the scope has, in which the scope has changed significantly over the last year since we signed this PSA. We've asked them to change their scope, and it's cost us money to do that. So we would have to come back and ask for more money to complete what we initially started. Our goal now with that intro is really to move to council for any questions or discussion on the police building project and to address any outstanding concerns, receive guidance, and establish actionable steps to move this project forward. We have slides for you on the spacing requirements, needs, the proposed plans, the conditions report, all of which we can pull up and go through if that's your desire. But again, we're looking for you for that direction. We can have further discussions on the site, alternate sites, anything you want to talk about tonight. But we're opening it up to you now to ask us to provide you whatever information you need that you don't have before you tonight. I put those 4 questions I asked back up on one slide so you can see them. If you want to address them or if you want to ask questions based on those, feel free to, but I just leave those up for you all to see to help guide this next phase of this discussion. So thank you.
Are we asking questions now?
Yes.
All right. I do have a question. I don't know if the chief can answer this or if Chip can answer this, but it's about the details of the contract with Indigo. So if we decide we don't want to throw, good money after bad, and we don't like their plan, and we don't want to spend another $330,000 or so, can we get out of that contract?
Do you want to answer that, Chip, or?
Yes, we can. We're at a kind of a breaking point. Indigo's not doing any additional work for us because we spent all the money that the council had budgeted and appropriated.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you don't have a question? Hans, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Chief, obviously we have this, conditions report, which has been out for a while. For the public's benefit, what would you, if you had to pick the top 3, items that would prevent kind of the, what I would call kind of the lipstick on the pig, scenario here as an option, what would those items be?
The first biggest problem with that is that we did a conditions report. The conditions report has glaring deficiencies in this building that we can't avoid. So if you just invested a little bit of money to fix some of the safety and security issues, you're not addressing the major issues with this building, especially when you talk about the HVAC, electrical, roofing. Those are all big ticket items that are going to cost more money than we've allotted in this budget to fix. So for me, that's the biggest issue. anything you do to this building that's substantial is going to require ADA improvements. Those are big ticket items as well. So again, a building that was built in 1968, the codes have changed, the safety concerns have changed. As I mentioned before, this building was literally built without a property room, or an interview room, which completely baffles me. Not questioning the 1966 council, but those are the things you want to think about when you're planning a police building, and they've survived without it. But the safety concerns are too great. Ventilation isn't there to make it safe. So there's so much that has to be done to this building that simply just fixing minor safety security issues is not going to work for this building.
So are you proposing we just leave it at this and not get into, you're leaving it up to us to ask for more?
This was provided. It's something we can talk. I'm not prepared to talk, but we have everybody else here who is. I'm not an expert in conditions. I'm not an expert in architecture. So we have the experts here to talk about those. That's why I'm saying we have those PowerPoints that we can just pull up and go through. But that's, again, this is a special meeting. The format's a little bit different. So we're just prepared to do whatever you like.
I mean, so 3 of us have been elected in the last 90 days. 3 of us have had one look at this, and that was in a meeting a month ago. And all of us asked for a special meeting so that we could do a deeper dive, I think, on it. See what you all think. And I know Fred's here. It would benefit me to know the history and the players better. Because, I mean, Chief, you and I talked about 7 years ago, you were ready to start a project. Mm-hmm. And I'm really curious, I'd love to go back 7 years and understand what that project was, because it sounded like a let's fix what's broken approach to things. And that stopped primarily because of COVID, as I understand it. And then we launched a new initiative, and that brought in Indigo, and then Fred was brought in at some point. I'd like to understand how that happened and why, because it seems like we have a consultant here to manage our consultant. So I'd like to understand that history, for starters, and how we got there. And sure. I know Jeff and Alessandra, you have the knowledge, but I don't. I would like to see more detail on where this needs to go, but I also don't want to waste the public's time, so I want to understand that. But I think what do others think, I guess?
I share your curiosity about the Casavan project back in 2017. I was watching it as public, but time fades my memory. I'd just like to see how far that went. I know it was primarily ADA access and a couple other things. The other question I have that I don't know who can handle this is, when you went into this latest $150,000 design schematic process, did you really have a budget expectation of 30 to 40 million going into that process? Because you designed a 30 to 40 million dollar building, and I'm wondering how we got to there. So those are my,
okay.
I have other ones, but let's start there.
Yeah. Let me start off with going back to 2017, just for historical. I think I've spoken so many times on this, I feel like everybody knows it, and I feel like I'm telling the same story over and over again. In 2017, we approached the city with some safety and security concerns with the police department. Obviously, a 50-year-old building at the time, there were concerns. And the biggest issue I had was our evidence processing and storage. There isn't adequate storage in our building for evidence as far as ventilation and security. And during 2017, we had a real risk of fentanyl exposure to officers. And we have probably the worst packaging of evidence I've ever seen anywhere, unsafe. And when we looked at other agencies, you can see there's some much better ventilation. And especially when fentanyl came out, there was a real concern on my part for the safety of my staff and the whole department. So I approached saying, can we look at an evidence processing area property storage that's properly ventilated, and some minor security upgrades, including dispatch, which I think we've seen pictures. It was pretty bad, but we have invested money to fix that, so it looks a lot better. Those were the three areas I really keyed in on in 2017. To do that, we had initially discussed a push out of the building on the existing foundation. If you look at the building as you face the steps going in to the right, there's a concrete landing to build out on that for a property room. That's really how it started. Council, after going back and forth through discussions and going through historical review board, we got it designated as not a historical site. And then council looked at, well, there's probably more things that you need out of that building. And it was a discussion about our emergency operations center, the leaks that were taking place, and perhaps pushing out the left side of the building further to create a community room and an emergency operations center. So that project ballooned up a little bit. There was a lot of debate back and forth even then about that being too much money to spend on this building right now. We reached a point with Cassavan. They came in with multiple plans that we presented. We had to make adjustments on it by moving it back off the street, creating space to make it look more, fitting for our aesthetic here. So we did a lot of work on it. We have those plans. And then we were getting ready to move forward, and COVID hit. And obviously there were a lot of cutbacks, so we pulled that project off the CIP and we waited. And then I wasn't here, but I know in 2022 this became another council priority. And the thought and the mindset became, we need to look at this building. And although those are great ideas in 2017, did it meet all the needs of the current police department and what we need to do? You had a new chief here who addressed some issues that needed to be looked at, and things that I didn't consider and think of in 2017, like an interview room in the lobby, like a restroom maybe in the lobby, security for the parking, security for booking of prisoners, and safety in that aspect. So there were more things that came up regarding police safety and security. So the project grew. But the biggest thing that happened was to this project, in my mind, looking at it and reviewing this, when I came back in 2023, was the conditions report. We looked at, well, okay, let's look at doing this to this building, but is this building in good enough shape to handle this? Are we putting, to phrase Councilmember Booter, just lipstick on a pig? We will solve those safety and security issues, but are we fixing a building that's leaking? Are we fixing a roof that's had leaks and there's stains in the police department? Are we fixing the break room where a big chunk of that ceiling just collapsed on the table where people take breaks? Are we fixing the EOC area that flooded in 2019 with a storm? Are we fixing the electrical panels down in Public Works that had to be waterproof to prevent electric shock? It's still leaks like a sieve in that area. So before we invest a couple $1 million to fix what the police department needs, why aren't we looking at this building? Because in 10 years after doing these minor upgrades to make the police happy, this whole building's gonna be a mess again. So that's where I think we got ourselves into a situation with a conditions report. We just put ourselves on notice that this building probably should be red tagged and we shouldn't even be in it. And we're kind of skirting a fine line right here by occupying a building that could be unsafe. If something happens in that building, we have a report that tells us exactly what's wrong with this building. So we've been talking about this for years, and we have to do something. It's not a matter of what can we do, it's what do we have to do. And I will share with you that you have over half your city staff working in this building. And we've been talking about this for 8 years. That kind of hurts. And I'm just talking from the heart right now. I have to look at my staff every day and say, we have a professional standard here. We're going to do things the right way. And then they walk into a building that has no security, and they don't feel safe. And they go, what's our professional standard for the city? What are we doing? And I get to look at them every day. And I'll be honest, part of why I left in 2021 because of my frustration with this project. Part of why I came back was because I want to make this happen. And it isn't. And we continue to talk about it. And I'm tired of talking about it. I really am. I'm getting to a point where I'm extremely tired of talking about it. I've given this presentation so many times, I feel like I'm just telling the same story over and over again. So we're asking you, we can share with you. We're happy to do a deeper dive to go into the conditions report. We're happy to go into the plans, the layout, the plans I went over in January. Exact same presentation. I can give you that again tonight of how we plan on doing this to make the department better, to give you a building we can be proud of. Happy to do that tonight. I just didn't know fully the direction you wanted. What did you want to hear? Because what we want to hear from you is that we're going to do something. That's all we want to hear. I need to know what direction to take.
Do you have, thank you, Chief. I
Yeah.
appreciate your honesty, I really do. And I share your frustration. I've been in all the meetings that you've been in and
Yeah, I
heard you.
appreciate that.
Your tone has shifted considerably from a year ago, and I appreciate that. The question about the $30 to $40 million budget is still hanging out there. I'd like to know how
sir,
we went from.
Yeah, we didn't back into the numbers, sir. So the number came out of the assessment that we did, and again, and the slide decks are up here at the dais, so we can do the existing conditions assessment if the council wants to see that. That's great. But that number was derived out of what the chief is saying, which is there's really nothing salvageable about this building, and it necessitates such entirely being rebuilt.
Okay, so what you're saying is, before the council approved $150,000 in additional design money to be spent to come up with a schematic diagram, they knew that this was going to be $30-40 million, and they went into that phase knowing that.
I don't think that's the case.
Okay,
no.
so we designed a $30 to $40 million building. I'm just wondering,
We don't know what the cost is. That's why I'm saying.
but it's not $10 million. We know that.
If you look at supplies and
Yeah.
all that, that's a rough estimate. And I think that's the number everybody latched onto, is that's how much it's going to cost. I put it here, we have no idea what it's going to cost until we finish those designs and come back to you. But
Wouldn't it be good in this process in general to know what a budget is before we start designing a building at all? I know I built 5 houses, and I know when I went in that I had a budget, and I told the architect, here's my budget, so they didn't design a $10 million house instead of a $3 million house. People from the public are coming and asking me this question, so I have to surface it.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. I mean, this is a purpose. I mean, your houses were purpose built as well,
Yes.
Mayor. This is so specialized, and the existing facility is so unique the way it was put together. We had to unravel it before deciding whether, again, it was salvageable at any level.
Okay.
So, sir, no, we didn't have a budget. In fact, Councilmember Dramoff has been asking me for 2.5, 3 years, if any number, Chip, how do we pay for it? And again, we've done some poking around the edges about general obligation bonds and the like, and Mr. Buder asked some questions that we can talk about tonight regarding interest rates and duration, for payments on that. But that was always kind of the next step. After we define the scope of the project, then you associate a budget with it, and then we talk about how we're going to pay for it. And then somewhere in there, we do the value engineering because the price is going to be a lot of money.
Okay. Do any other council people have any questions right now? Because
I have a quick one.
Go ahead.
About the historical, thank you,
Yes.
Mayor. The historical aspect, it might be something Brandon might be able to answer. You mentioned the last time it had the historical evaluation was in 2017, and it was not historic. But if I understand correctly, we have to repeat that every 5 years, so it's due for another one. So are there any plans for that?
not that I'm aware of. It was not designated as historical in 2000. It might have been 18 when we finally got it through. But if it's every 5 years, it would be due for that again.
Brandon, can you confirm that? Thanks.
The chief should think about going into land use because he is correct on that. Every 5 years, yes, an evaluation is good for 5 years. So whatever the project ends up being, you would do an evaluation before doing that. So we're not to that step yet, and we could undertake that at any time just to know what we're dealing with. But at this point, to the chief's point, to Chip's point, we're just trying to figure out what the project is, and then I think that would inform what the next step is from the historic evaluation.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Brandon, as long as you're there, I've heard two things said. One is not here, but just out in the street. One is that sort of once you touch a structure that is deficient in terms of current code, ADA and otherwise, that you basically have to bring the building 100% into compliance with current code. The other version of that that I heard was no, but once you touch that building, 20% of your budget has to be devoted to code compliance. Are either of those true?
Both are kind of true and untrue in a weird way. So there are different thresholds and triggers for when you have to bring a building into full compliance. If you don't trigger the having to bring the full building into compliance, then that's where that 20% of your budget comes in. So if you haven't triggered full ADA compliance, then 20% of your construction budget has to be put towards ADA with the notion of making it better, leaving it better than you found it. But once you trigger, and certainly whatever we would do in this building would trigger full compliance, because it's going to be a lot of work. And take residential development, for example, 50% of the walls. If you take off 50% of the sheetrock on the walls, everything has to be brought up to code. So there's triggers for that, and I think certainly we would hit that trigger on this building, but that's where you're coming at, is there's one for like a lower threshold. If you're not going to have to do the whole building, you at least have to make it better.
And it sounds like what we're hearing is we're probably going to have to bring it all up to code.
I would be shocked if we didn't trigger the
Okay,
full
so
compliance,
that's probably
yeah.
going to happen. And we probably wouldn't want to do a half-baked police station after the speech that I just heard from the
Yeah.
chief. So
I had one other question. It's not for you, Brandon. It's really more of a comment, because I made it last time, was that at the council meeting in July or June of last year, the previous council, Alessandra and Jeff, you were on that council. I wasn't at the meeting, but I've listened to it multiple times. And I didn't think I heard a request from that council to increase the scope of the project. There was a debate about, do we want to continue to pursue a couple of estimates, one being renovation on the existing site and another one being a new building, so tear down in a new building. But what I thought I heard, and that's why I'm looking to, if you guys can remember what you said, was directing staff to pursue a renovation strategy of the police station. And I didn't hear the authorization to really add to the scope an entire renovation of the public works side of this facility. And yet that's what has come back to us, is a very elaborate redesign of the entire project, and then accomplished in 7 phases, I think.
and that requires moving the yard to a 2 to 3 acre site
Could I
somewhere
just
else.
weigh in on that? Bob, my recollection of it is exactly the way you described it. I think the main thing at that time that we were deciding is we didn't want to explore this Vista Lobos option. We wanted to keep it where it was. We heard very powerful arguments from people such as Ken White, who said in Carmel, we preserve our buildings and we fix them up, and he used the fire station as an example, and Sunset Center is another one. And that's just sort of more of the Carmel way of doing things. And I even remember Councilman Richards made a comment about he liked the exterior of the building. It reminded him of 1960s, 70s Brady Bunch style building. And so I thought, we're going to keep that building that's going to look like that. That's why I personally was so shocked when I saw the plans from Indigo, because it was just so massive and on such a massive scale, unlike anything about the building that was currently there. So I did not, or when I, voted 3-2 in the group to go forward with keeping and restoring the building, was a totally different impression that I had in my mind than what we got. And the whole public works thing is a whole nother thing that I didn't really think that we were getting into. So that was, when I voted, that's how I saw things.
Right, I think we're getting into a discussion more than questions at this point, which is good, but I personally would like to hear from the public and get as much information on the table as we can before we go back to Fred and start looking at details, if it's okay. Everybody okay with that? You okay? All right, so before we get a public comment, I've got some words I have to say. So we're gonna open up public comment. Since this is a special meeting on the police building project, public comment is limited to only the items on the agenda, meaning the police station building. Please raise your hand in the chambers and on Zoom if you'd like to speak so we can get an idea of the total number of people who'd like to make a comment at this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we don't have a problem with the 3 minutes. So each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and while stating your name is not required, it helps us to identify speakers in the meeting minutes. Please form a line at the podium, please. We have so few, that's okay. Under the Brown Act, public comments on agenda items must relate to that item. Speakers attending the meeting remotely who fail to comply with the Brown Act will be muted. All right, we have our first speaker. Safwat, it's you, right?
Yes.
I'm going to give a minor introduction. I'm not going to count this against his time, and I might give him a little extra time because he has some interesting information to present. I was introduced to Safwat Malik by Mayor Potter, and I guess they've worked together on some projects in the past. That's true. And he didn't bid on this project, but he did come up with some interesting design concepts, and I think it's good at this point to take a look at some other interesting ideas. He gave us a presentation, and I think it's available if you could put it up. I'm not saying I approve this. I'm just giving him an opportunity to present this as a public comment since the meeting was structured in a way without any area for him.
I know I have a very limited time, so I will be speaking fast. My name is Safwat Malik. Thank you. I'm an architect in the area, and this project, I heard a lot of meetings talk about this and that and the other. One thing that attracted my attention is Mayor White's concept that there is a way to expand the police station on the existing site. So I figure I might as well take a look at it. My concept is economy, it is simplicity, and it is practicality. So I looked at the plans. I worked with Mr. Muir on that, and the things that I came up with is very simple. To keep the police station where it is and keep the public works department where it is during construction. How do I do that? So I looked at the platform or the slab that is there that is being unused, and I looked at what could be done with it. So don't move anybody. Keep everybody where they are and let them cope with the current conditions for a year or two during construction of the new building. Then I started looking at where the entrance is and this and that. So I'm gonna get to it.
Neil, maybe you want to sit down. I'm going to give
that?
him a few minutes to present this.
Okay. So this is the list that I just spoke about. And this is the list I had from Fred that was given to him by the police chief. I looked at every item on that list very carefully and studied what needs to be done to comply with it. So I came with a plan utilizing the slab and stay away from police station, stay away from public works. I don't know what I did. So this is a larger plan. Is there a pointer here?
Yeah, it's at the top.
It's on the mouth.
Pardon?
It's on the
It's on the mouth.
Oh, no? Okay.
So I put the entrance of the new entrance of the police station right here, between the entrance to the public works and the driveway that is coming out of the garage. And this is the main entrance with an elevator. Then this is the main level here, and this is the reception counter. I'm not going to be, in interest of time, I'm not going to go through all the details because it's going to take time. So just take my word that this is every single component that is in the list of the police chief is right here. So this part is the roof of the Public Works Department. This is not changed, except I put a handicap lift here to take you from the street level to the plaza. And then this is a stairway that going down to the garage. This is the police station as it stands right now and the existing parking lot here. This is the garage. The original design of this garage is it's a post-tension slab, and you can see this is the way it is supposed to be from the original design. So this is a very quick study of how the garage can be utilized properly, without regard to all the equipment that is there, without regard to anything other than focusing on the police station. So these are part of the new areas that are in the list. I left the shooting range the way it is, did not change. I left this area the way it is. And then this courtyard is so spacious and so can be arranged. So between the courtyard, these are existing rooms, by the way, between the courtyard and between the plenty of parking spaces here. If you want to restore the workshop here, you can do that. If you want to relocate it out in the backyard, which is a more practical way to do it, you can do it. So, that is basically the plan. This is the square footage. We are talking about 11,000 square feet total between the main level and the lower garage. 11,500 square feet. These are elevations and a cross section. And part of my concept is to, as I said, simplicity. So every single window on the new building is the same. So you don't have to have many types of buildings. Everything is the same. It works just fine. This is an institutional building, so it needs to have its own character. I'm not particularly invested in this, but this is just a concept to show that you can see where the driveway is, right here, and where is the Public Works Department is, and we squeeze that area inside, in between. And these are some renderings. And that's my end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Safwat.
Sure.
And this is his intellectual property, obviously, but he did this for free at this point, so I was impressed with the level of effort he put into it. I don't know why this wasn't surfaced, because Mayor Potter was aware of this, but I think it has some interesting ideas as we consider what we might do to make the project phases more easier to implement. The good thing about this design is it doesn't require us to move the corporate yard somewhere with 2 to 3 acres, which we don't have. And that corporate yard has been working for quite a while. It's tricky, but it works. All right, so Neil, you want to come up? Yeah, oh no. Is he coming back? No. Okay. Next speaker then? Looks like Ken White.
Well, thank you for the time, Ken White. When you added the Public Works, you got my heart right there. I'm 100% for that. 2 questions I was going to ask. Have you stopped the roof leaking and all the dripping pans? Have you stopped that? Okay. Do it this time. Do it this time with both those projects.
I'm saying now we haven't fixed it. It's still leaking.
Well, you're going to fix it, I know.
Yes.
The point I want to get across today is something that happened at Sunset Center when we got into construction. We had taken a couple of things out of the plans that would have enhanced the structure and the ability to put across a meaningful project. And we got into construction, and then we all of a sudden realized if we don't do it now, we're going to be back in 3 or 4 or 5 years tearing it apart and putting these implements in. So they did. What did that mean? Well, we had to raise some more money. Okay. This city can do these things if you set your sights high and do it very well. So go long, go high, and go strong on this project. Don't cut many little things out because you'll think you'll save a few bucks. You're going to come back in another few years and put what you cut out back in there just to get it workable. Don't do that. Secondly, don't cut the budget because you don't like the color or the windows in the wrong place. That's what killed the last one. Somebody did a drawing of the outside sitting up on Junipero, and if you'll remember, people started complaining about the color, the design wasn't Carmel, blah, 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 and it held the whole damn thing up, and you're here today trying to solve it. Go big, go strong, and stay 5-0. You have to do this, and I'll make one more comment. Do a little session on bonding. The public, I don't think, understands how you work your bonding, what the costs are. This is an educational process. Sit down like you do tonight, have an expert in here and get your bonding described. Look, this council is going to be asked to solve a problem that 2 or 3 other councils have dithered around and nothing's happened. Be bold, get it done, and get on with it.
Thank you, Ken. We needed an inspirational speech about right now.
The one thing I forgot to mention is you can use the existing building later on once the police station takes the new building. You can take the existing building and turn it into the Public Works Department or use it for expansion any way you want.
Yeah, you could maybe move the planning department over there or something. Okay, who's next? Pep. Good evening.
Hi, Rich Pepe. I'm not exactly sure what former Mayor White just said, go big, go bold, because what's in front of you is somewhere between 3 and 4 million and 30 and 40 million. So I sit with Ken every now and then, and I think he was saying spend 30 or 40, but I can't speak 100%. We all know we want the building fixed, but I will tell you, just like many of you speak with folks on the streets, we call it, I see very little appetite for 30 or 40 million, which most likely, most people say it's going to be 40 or 50 million. Now, the chief spoke from the heart, and it's very meaningful, Chief. Thank you very much for that. I almost feel, sitting in the audience, the chief shouldn't be making this presentation. I think it should be somebody else, because he speaks more like an applicant asking for something rather than giving an unbiased report at that point. Hate to say it. But again, I see very little appetite on the street for creating this bond for 30, 40, 50 million, although people do want to see a safe building. The last thing I would say, I sat in on some of the flock discussions, and it went from 30-ish flock cameras, and once we really started asking for a comparison to crime versus how many cameras, it came down to 6 or 8. And so what I don't see in this is any comparison to maybe talk to the community about how much are you going to spend, and will it be in any way a deterrent to crime? We have very little crime here. Chief says we have some. I know we have some, Chief, no doubt. But it is very little compared to most cities. So safety is one thing, but I don't see this solving or deterring any more crime. So again, maybe we have to put a little budget based on that too. But we all want the building fixed, but again, I'm just going to say for the third time, I see very little appetite for a big 30, 40, $50 million bond in the public. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Cynthia Williams, resident here, just really quick, because I know I only have 3 minutes. In 1983, I was hired at the Carmel Police Department. I worked there for 7 years in the capacity of parking officer and then police officer. And I just retired after 32 years as a paramedic. So with that said, who in this room has actually worked in the police department? Right on. And who's processed criminals they've arrested in the police department? Show of hands. And who's had to take a shower in the police department? Do you see where I'm going with this? Okay. I think to try to restrain updating that police department to fit the existing building is, I think, naive. I have sat with the chief on many county. God, I just lost my train of thought. I've sat with him, and I know how he works. The point is, it's time to stop talking about it. Having more meetings and ad hocs, we have to get past that point. I voted for you guys to make these decisions, to make the people that keep us safe. That is your job. And I think renovation is long overdue, and I would hate to see Chief Tomasi have to say this speech one more time. So as a resident, I'm counting on you guys to let's move this ball forward. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy Carr. First of all, I want to say how much I appreciate you bringing this issue out in this manner. It's very transparent. You're allowing the residents to have an input, and that has been my pet peeve for the last year. I didn't feel that we had the opportunity to be involved in the big numbers that everybody was talking about. The police deserve a station that is safe for them and to keep our town safe. And in saying that, I must also say that the project needs to be governed by what we can afford. Now, I think I heard Ken mention something about a bond, or I'm not entirely sure what that all means, but if we need to talk to the public about that before we go forward, then that's what we need to do. But if we don't do that, then we are bound, as far as I know, by what we can pay within reason for what we need to do. I personally don't understand what has delayed the maintenance on this building through the years, and we need to make this a priority. I also feel very strongly that we need to use our local talent and spend our money on the project and not on further consultants out-of-town architects, out-of-town designers. We have lots of local people here that are capable, willing to participate, and have a lot to contribute. They understand the area, they understand what we need, they understand more what we want, and I think that needs to be a big consideration.
Thank you, Andy. Anyone else in the chamber here? One more. Hugo.
Good afternoon, City Council. Good afternoon, Mayor. My name is Hugo Ferlito. If I read what the council said, I think you've given up the idea of putting lipstick on this thing, and you recognize the emergency of this. The building is not safe for the employees. Actually, I wouldn't blame them if they say they didn't want to go in there. I think you just don't understand how serious this condition of this building is. It's not safe. We had a rape in the city, and that lady was interviewed in a police car because there was no place to interview that person in the facility. Come on, folks. I mean, we can't, debate this. And I do not know this architect that Dave Potter brought into the equation. I do not know how many police stations he's built. But I would tell you that if you're going to go have heart surgery, I would suggest you don't do it with someone that's their first job, their first operation they're going to do. So anyway, I'm gratified that you're not going to put lipstick on this thing. I'm gratified that you're going to go and try to fix this. Sunset Center always comes up as an example of how this community remodels instead of fixing it. Well, the Sunset Center, if you analyze, is a disaster. It's costing the city, what, $1 million, close to $1 million a year, because there's not enough room to book big acts, to bring in talent that would make that would create income. It's limited because it was remodeled instead of going to the new. And I suggest you go new, and I suggest you do it before this man takes off again. And I don't blame him if he does. And Carmel-by-the-Sea needs a new revenue source, and you need to face the fact that you cannot afford some of the things that you need to do in the city, and not being able to afford it. You need to come up with the money to do the things that we need to do. There's no way you cannot do this building. You have a parking lot at the end of Sunset by the ocean. They should be charging parking. They should be charging parking because those people who come to the city as tourists cost us money to keep them safe, to make sure the facility, the sidewalks are good. So we just need a new revenue source. And the fact that you don't have a new revenue source, you need to do a new revenue source so you can afford the things that the city needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugo. Anyone else here?
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand before.
That's okay.
But since Anil's not here, I'll just take his time.
Yeah.
I'm Joe DiNucci, resident. I'm encouraged by several things. One, this meeting's happening, and it looks like, as Andy commented, it's quite transparent. It's quite a refreshing change. We like it a lot. The other thing I'm encouraged by is, as Pepe said, there's a range between $4 million and 30 or 40 million, big range. And I'm actually encouraged, although I have no idea how to price it, with the draft proposal we saw of a design that could work. I'm sure it's got some things to tend to. There's some things that need to be included and whatnot. But my intuition, for whatever that's worth, is that that's not a $30 or $40 million project. It's some significant amount of money. And as Hugo said, and I strongly agree, we have to find a way to do it because we have to do this. But I don't think when this dust settles, it's a $30 or $40 million disaster. It's probably something that we can't afford. We owe it to the public safety people and the public works people to do it, and to the residents. But again, I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing. All feels good to me.
Which design are you talking about? Your cost estimates? The one that's on the table right now from Indigo?
No, the I don't remember the man's name.
Malik?
Malik.
Okay, thank you. Who else has been hiding out and wants to speak? I knew there was one. Hi. How are you?
Marianne Chickatons.
Yeah.
So I'm a somewhat competent local architect, and I would like to encourage you to please hire somebody who actually has designed a police station before. So, I mean, although I'm sure do good work, I wouldn't apply to design your police station. I wouldn't apply to remodel a hospital or design an airport. I'm a residential architect. Please do not hire again an architect who has never designed a police station before. I mean, these are people who really, first of all, they know how a police station functions, but also you have a consultant on hand that has the knowledge of what things cost, because they are already at the same time doing 2 or 3 other police stations. So we don't need to stick our head in the sand with some numbers from people who have no idea, because they are actually not building police stations. So whether you go forward with the current consultant, which I think is a good choice, or you pick someone else, please pick somebody who has a good portfolio of police stations. Thank you.
So while I have you here, if I could ask a question. So you've heard this circular logic, this chicken and the egg situation regarding the budget and designing, budget design. Give us some advice.
You cannot
You build
get
expensive houses, and so
yes, and I build actually cheap ones too. You know?
You're faced with this.
So you cannot get a number before you have a design. And in a case like that, you don't need to only have the design, you have to have some structural pre-design and some mechanical pre-design. And everything else in terms of numbers is a complete waste of time by everybody, because nobody can pull a number out of their sleeve without having first structural estimates, mechanical estimates, and then a good square foot estimate by somebody who has 2, 3 police stations in the running right now, and they all come in at about the same price a square foot. So I urge you to go down that path.
Although these police stations that Indigo's designed previously are fairly eclectic, and interesting. I mean, very interesting, green construction and so on, very different than our police station remodeling it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Believe me that those kind of design decisions does not really drive the cost. You know, you can then refine the cost with things like that. Like in a residential house, the plumbing fixture, and it doesn't really matter, you know, whether that's a $200 or a $2,000 plumbing fixture. If you need a pier foundation that has to go down 30 feet, or if you can have a regular spread footing, that is really what drives the cost of buildings. So,
okay, so if you were sitting here and you were on the council, what's your advice?
my advice is to take the next step. You know, vet the design. I think that you have a right as a new council to go and look through whether there's excessive things in there. And if there's not, take the next step and get the engineers and the consultants in to give you a pre-design that you can get an accurate number on.
That's assuming that we like the design that we have?
You don't have a design. That's the next thing I wanted to address. I'm really sorry that you were even shown. I have seen them too, these two big boxes. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a design. It was what architects call a massing study, which I never do them because they always have the same awful result. So you should only look at the layout. The layout, I think, is pretty good. And then they can do some sketches of actually how roofs and stuff should work with that building. Certainly not the two warehouses that you saw. So,
all right.
May I ask Marianne a question?
Yes.
Are you still the local architect who is going to do that design for us?
I'm not the local architect who does the design. I'm consulting with Indigo on some local ordinances and you know.
But you are part of this project, right?
Not so far.
Because I remember when we went through, Chip, I remember asking you about this, that Marianne is the local architect that Indigo works with.
Yeah, but we haven't done any design work. I saw what was currently proposed, and I advised not to show that to anybody in terms of the massing study. But the layout, I think, is very competent and is a very good layout and makes really good use of the first level that is getting revamped and reused.
Okay, but you do have a stake in this because this is potentially a commission and a job that you're going to get.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, because we need local expertise.
Yeah.
But it's a good
Just
point to
so
bring
far
up.
I don't.
It's a good
Yeah.
point to bring up. Thank you. All right, anybody else hiding out there? Yes. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the discussion. You're bringing up some good points.
Hi, my name is Amy Lynn, and I work at the department.
Real close.
Super nervous. Hi, everyone. So my name is Amy Lynn, and I'm a PSO at the station. One of my friends and coworkers is actually watching us live right now, and she asked that I also speak up for her as well. So she's our evidence tech, and it's concerning some of the lack of ventilation or the storage for our evidence. And the main thing I would like to say, though, is that we're more focused on like our safety of our health and our well-being working in that building. It's not so much about putting lipstick on a pig or trying to make it look better. Trust and believe, I have tried. I have tried every night shift. But there's some serious things that are concerning. The roof, the handles falling off of things, and many others that I can't think about right now. But the main point is that we're focused on our health working in that building. It's not so much about the aesthetics of it. But thank you.
Thank you. We share your concerns. Is that it in the room here? All right, we get one more. We get, oh, two more.
As the architect, I would like to make one suggestion, and that is that we go through.
Could you give us your name?
Oh, John Hammond, Indigo Architects.
Okay, you're with Indigo.
Yeah,
Good.
and my suggestion is that we take a look at the plans that we've got so that you'll understand better what the police need, what the evolution of the process is of the building getting bigger, so that you'll understand all of that. And one thing I would like to say, just, regardless of who designs a police station, it's going to cost in excess of $1,200 a square foot. So the way to get the police station less expensive, of course, is to make it smaller to the extent that you can. And that's sort of what you're stuck with, is it is very expensive to do a complex building like a police station. And it's much more expensive to do a civic building than to do a private building. It's just.
But 1,200 is the number for a civic.
Yeah, that's kind of a minimum number.
Okay.
And we're in Carmel.
And
Carmel isn't going to want a modular building. I mean, I assume they don't. And you want a quality civic building that reflects your community.
Can you explain how we got from a police station remodel to basically a public works police station campus that required us moving the yard off-site, which I personally, I'll give my opinion now, I don't think that's a practical thing to do in this town.
Right.
And I don't think it's necessary either, but because somehow a decision was made that changed the complexion of this project, and I didn't see that, to play on Bob's comment, I didn't see that in the directive from the council.
Right.
So but you were sitting in the rooms when all these things happened.
Right.
And I don't like looking back, but we have to keep this from happening again. I'd just like to know how that happened.
Okay. So our original contract, which we signed in '23, was to design a police station, and either on another site or on that site, and we were, so there was a bunch of back and forth about whether it should go up to Vista Lobos or not. Yeah. And the council, in its wisdom, decided, no, we want to do everything on the existing site. And that makes, a lot of sense from a lot of reasons. Vista Lobos site is a good site also. Then the council gave us the direction to do the police station on the existing site. But the problem is the police station does not fit in the existing building, and the Public Works Department is occupying 1/3 of the existing building right now. So what was necessary was to expand the existing police building somewhat, kick the Public Works out, and give the police a safe and secure parking lot and sally port so we don't have prisoners escaping, and, you know, to create a good building. But then that meant that all of the fleet maintenance functions that go on in the current garage needed a new building, which we could fit on your existing site. We had to take out a lot of equipment, the street sweepers, the backhoe, and a bunch of other equipment had to move off-site.
How did that discussion take place?
Pardon?
How did that discussion take place where that was deemed a reasonable thing to do?
That was a discussion that we had in terms of designing and working with Chief Tomasi and City Manager
Bob Hurry.
and Public Works.
Yeah.
So then, anyway, what happened then is that since Public Works was being dislocated from their existing buildings and parking garage, we ended up doing a new program for the Public Works Department. And that program, we found we could build, you know, a new building on site, mostly over the garage, to house Public Works, and with a little space left over for some other city functions. And so that's the story of how we got from your original direction to put the police department, you know, to accommodate the police department on site and as much as Public Works as we could on site. But the end result is there needed to be additional space for storing equipment. And, you know, and there already, you can't fit all of the Public Works equipment on site. You have dump trucks, street sweepers, and other equipment that is currently stored off-site.
On Vista Lobos.
Pardon?
Vista Lobos parking lot. It's on the Vista Lobos parking lot, yeah.
Some of it is in the parking lot, parking lot now, but now that needs to be turned over to the police in order to create a secure parking lot.
Yes. Okay.
So that's just explains the question, hopefully, of how we got from, you know, your directive to where we are.
Somebody else ask a question, I'll take a break.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question, John. You know, Nova, are you able to pull up the agenda packet at all?
I can, yeah.
I'm on page 12, the agenda packet of the PDF. It's in the initial report from Indigo. And I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting this right. So, you know, you talked about how it's going to be about $1,200 a square foot.
Yes.
We've had this report for quite some time, even before we made this decision to go with the renovation option versus some of the other options. So I'm just going to, if you get to page 12.
Of the staff report?
Oh, no, of the whole PDF. So on that one, it's page, let's see. It's the first page of the executive summary.
I'd have to say the $1,200 a square foot, that's a budget, that's just a number that, you know, it's going to be somewhere in that range, just like the 30 to 40. We don't have, you know, input from all of the various engineers and whatnot.
No, he's looking at this report. This is the staff report for this meeting.
It's fine, I'll read it. It says at the very end, there's 2 paragraphs. At the bottom of the penultimate paragraph, it says, based on our current findings, the estimated budgeted cost of renovating the existing police building for generic police or city office use would be $1,175 per square foot. And then you say further down in the last paragraph, currently the typical construction cost for building a new police station will be on the order of $1,200 a square foot.
$1,200?
Yeah, so are you saying there that basically the per square foot cost between like renovating the existing structure and building a new one is roughly the same?
Yeah, because every system in the building, the HVAC, the IT, everything needs to be replaced. It's all, it's all outdated, basically.
So I read this this summer,
Yeah.
and I was absolutely floored. And I tried to talk about this in the candidate forum, and
Yeah.
nobody ever really latched onto it, I guess. But the idea that it would be $1,175 a square foot to renovate that building, it's, and then $1,200 a square foot and you get something brand new. I've never understood why we wouldn't just tear it down. I'm getting into comments here.
That is, tearing it down is a definite option because, basically we'd have to gut the inside of the building. The windows are worn out, skin is worn out, the shakes on the mansard roof are falling apart. So what you're left with is the concrete bones of the structure. And even those don't quite meet, current earthquake standards. There's a lot of good concrete there. I'd hate to throw it away and replace it because concrete is a major, component of global warming. So it would be good to keep it. Also, there's the whole concept of just the historic bones of the structure and maintaining those bones because they're part of the history of Carmel. And so, like, for example, the garage structure, we'd keep the concept that we have now keeps most of that garage structure. It would need to be strengthened a bit in order to get the public, to support the public works building.
But in terms of the cost, the equation here, to simplify it down, again, orders of magnitude, this is like a high level estimate without, kind of a bottom.
Yeah, it's a very high level estimate.
But you're basically saying it's going to be about $1,200 a square foot either way, give or take a margin.
Yeah.
So basically the equation here is $1,200 a square foot times how big we want it to be.
Yeah.
And so we've got to decide what's going to be in it, and we get to pick a renovated version of that building or a new building, and we have to decide what goes in it, and that's going to tell us how much it's going to cost.
Well, both Mr. Malik and Indigo's designs required building completely new structures over the existing.
Exactly.
So you're really doing both.
Right.
You're renovating some of it and building a new building.
We took it to heart that the building should go there, okay? And so once you decide the building should go there, it made sense to just keep the police station where it is now in that building, expand it a little bit, and then in order to accommodate public works, to build some new structures right on that site. And we separated the two buildings so that we could comply with the Carmel, planning directives, which is to have interblock interconnectivity to increase pedestrian access. The other thing is, we heard, and it's obvious, about Carmel, is that people really value their views. So we tried to keep a wide space. We tried to size the buildings, keep them as low as possible. We didn't increase the height of the existing police building. In fact, it goes down a little bit. And then to spread them apart so that the folks that live on above Torres Street could see between the buildings out to points to Vista Lobos and out to the ocean. And so we did our best to preserve that. So rather than just building only over the garage, going up, we actually lowered part of the garage, and that also allowed the existing police building, rather than having one level above grade, we have 2 levels above grade, because we lowered part of the garage so folks on Torres Street could see over it, and also allowed us to have 2 levels of building with access to fresh air and natural light.
Sounds complicated.
So that's the verbal.
Sounds interesting, but complicated.
That's the verbal version. We can show you what it actually looks like.
So how do we do something that meets requirements without getting rid of the corporate yard?
Can we get rid of what?
I just think, I don't know how that decision was made without coming back to us and asking us. But that's a big decision in a small town with no space, and Rio Park isn't a solution, because it's a complicated situation all to itself that we're going to have to deal with soon.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we have 3 acres to move a corporate site.
Right. The decision was made. Well, for one thing, there was a long period of just discussing Vista Lobos.
Without any involvement with their ad hoc.
What?
Was our ad hoc committee involved in this at all, this discussion?
Yeah. We weren't involved in the Vista Lobos discussion.
No, I mean the ad hoc.
The ad hoc committee.
Councilperson Barron and Mayor Potter, were they in these discussions that were going on?
We weren't part of those discussions.
Okay.
He's saying he wasn't part of them. We were part of them, yes, sir, to answer your question, Mr.
So
Mayor.
the council members were involved in making the decision to move the yard off-site?
No,
we were not.
No.
And I think if you're going to ask questions about my behavior and Dave's behavior, I would prefer that you ask me.
No, that's not where I was headed. I'm not headed there, Jeff. I'm not headed there. But
I've got a quick question,
yes.
Mr. Hammond. How much time did you spend in Carmel before you came up with these plans?
We've been working on it since Pardon me. We've been working on it since the middle of 2023.
No, I mean physically spent in Carmel.
Physically, came down 3 or 4 times.
For like a weekend, or?
Yeah, well, for the day.
What I'm getting at is I'm not quite sure that you understand our community, because the plans that we saw and the initial feedback we got from the public, and I don't want to get into comment now, but it just really doesn't seem to fit with the character of the community.
Well, one thing is you've seen some blocks of granite, so to speak, that represent some boxes that represent the space that the building goes in.
But it's too big. That's what the community said. It's the massing that they're concerned with. We understand that it's not the final design of what it's going to look like, but it's the massing that's too large.
The buildings, the square footage of the buildings are what they are. I mean, there's 16 or 17,000 square feet of police building, and then there's the garage, and then there's 9,000 square feet of public works building.
That's huge for a community our size with low crime, a population of 3,000. It's what Rich Pepe was saying.
Yeah.
It's like, is this what our community wants and needs in a low crime community with actually fewer police officers now than we've had?
Right. The program was developed essentially by the police chief and his staff, and by Public Works and their staff. They came up with, of course, we know what their existing space is. They came up with the spaces that they need, and then we created a program and, did what we needed to do to fit them into a building.
But the square footage is enormous for a community our size. I mean, this might be better for a larger urban area with higher crime, larger police force. I mean, we are a small community that has low crime.
Yeah, that may or may not be true, but I think you should talk to Chief Tomasi about that. And obviously, if you guys decide that you don't want everything in the building, that can be changed. That's another decision. And so that's really where we're at the point now where we've put together something and we need your critique, and then we can go forward.
Okay, let's go to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Well, we might come back to you. I want to give, is it Officer Johnson still, or what are we now?
For right now, yeah. I got
Okay.
a couple of months.
All right.
So,
Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm Greg Johnson, 17 years at the PD. On my way out because I'm retiring due to medical issues, but I just kind of want to emphasize some of the things some of our employees have said. I appreciate it being a new council, a new mayor. You have to look at a lot of new things that other mayors, other councils have done. You have to sort of keep looking at it. In my 17 years, you're right, there isn't a lot of crime in town, but one of the reasons why is because I think you have a police department that works efficiently to keep crime down. The flip side of that is you don't have a building where you can do it 100% right 100% of the time. I've been in court where you have evidence that's questioned because we don't have proper evidence storage. I've been injured on the job because we don't have a proper holding facility. 2022, when I went out with this injury, I was able to come back on light duty. I was actually given a letter from the city saying they weren't sure if they could accommodate my light duty restrictions due to the fact that the building wasn't ADA compliant. So I couldn't even come back to work. I've since worked my way, did some light duty, but now I'm getting retired. That's frustrating, especially when we see other business or other buildings, other departments, $12,000 for bulletproof glass at City Hall, where we have a wooden door that I could probably push my bad leg through. So there are so many things that we need outside of just wanting to throw things at it, making it pretty, whatever it might be. There are just facility needs that for us to do our job right. It's not like, like you said, the crime is low, but when we have crime, we've had some major incidents over the last couple of years, they need to be done right. Being a part of the last incident we don't have the facilities or the means at the time to necessarily really take that investigation on by ourselves. And if we had a building that was up to code, up to standards, up to 2025 police standards, we can do our job 100% right, 100% of the time. And that's what's frustrating, seeing roofs being thrown without a question on other buildings, silly things here and there where we're trying to get a hole in our ceiling fixed in our lounge. It took a year to get that fixed, and it's still not fixed. That happened in 2019, I think. So that's the frustration we're getting from us. I can add that we've had people who've wanted to apply with us, who want to work for our police department, who decided not to because our facilities were terrible. I've heard it from more than 3 people, and that's getting quality employees over to fill those spots that we have that are open. We're gonna have another one here in a couple months, and I hope you guys get a good employee, knowing that you guys are moving forward with actually dedicating your time and your love and obviously a lot of money to your city and to your police department, to the people that work there. I think I'm out of time, so, all right, thanks.
You could keep going. Thank you. Al's here. All right, come on up, Al.
Mayor, Council, Al Saroyan. I was on the Forest and Beach Commission when we approved this back in 16 or 17, and I think it was the $4 million number they were talking about then, which everyone thought was a lot of money. Now, I know costs have increased since that time, but certainly not 10 times. I think that this council needs to do something. There's no question in anybody's mind that we need to fix this building. And I can't imagine remodeling that building and spending $1,000 a foot. I do the most outrageous remodels that don't cost $1,000 a foot. And they are gold-plated compared to what is necessary to do this. This is an office building with special uses. I think that, we could build a brand new building for $400 a square foot. I've built them. I know what they cost. And, to throw out these numbers of $1,000, $1,200 to build the building we need for our police department is outrageous. So I hope this council moves quickly. I don't want to see another 8 years go by and the problem not solved. But I think we've got to be realistic about what we're capable of doing. I don't think there's any support in this community to spend 40 million, start out spending 40 million, and it's going to end up being more. So I would urge you to do something that is as realistic as possible and as soon as possible. Thank you.
Before you sit down,
Sure.
you've seen the plans, right,
Yes.
for what's being proposed?
Yes, and I just saw today, like everyone else, the Malik presentation, and it intrigued me that that's a brilliant idea to consider doing a building while the other buildings can in part be operated, and then utilizing the entire campus.
Okay, since we've got you here,
I think that's something that should be explored.
Give us a comment about hiring a local architect that hasn't built 3 police stations before.
Well, I always refer to, I think it was I.M. Pei who was asked to do the Dallas Opera House. And they said, how many opera houses have you done? And his answer was, I only intend to do 1. And he got the job. A skilled architect can do an office building, a shopping center, a hotel. There's nothing magic about a police station. It's a building. So I don't know that we need to find somebody who's done 10 police stations to do our police station.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Al. Appreciate you being here.
We have a hand raised on
Yeah,
Zoom.
let's get the person online. They've been waiting a long time.
Okay. Phone number ending in 941. Go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Byrne and City Council members. This is Christy Hollenbeck. I think we all want a beautifully renovated, We all want a beautifully renovated and safe police station that stays within our means. I believe the police station should be on the same scale as our tiny community. The fire station remodel is a great example of a facility that is in scale with Carmel. It's beautiful and it's a small town fire station. I would like to see a similar appropriate scale for the police station. The reality is Carmel simply cannot afford a $30 to $60 million police station. I don't think most residents want a large tax increase. Most people who have built or renovated know that projects almost always go over budget. Many times projects can cost twice as much and take twice as long. A $40 to $60 million police station is just way too expensive. We don't need a huge Salinas-style police station for our little town. We just need a small, charming, safe, updated, Mayberry-style police station for a tiny little Carmel-by-the-Sea. How can we design a smaller scale police station that will meet needs without going over budget? Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Who wants to go next? Oh, yes, we'll close the public comment now, and we'll bring it back for further discussion, which we've already been having. Jeff, you ready to add something?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I think I've kind of told this story a couple times, and for those of you who have forgotten it, when Dave and I were elected back in 2018, the police station was a $2.5 million project that had gone through a number of contentious hearings, and it was a campaign issue. And in the beginning of 2019, Dave and I and Councilmember Richards sort of did a 3-2 vote and scaled the police station back to, and I'll use these words because thankfully I wasn't the first person that said them, lipstick on a pig. And what happened was that project kind of sat around and we were working on it. And I would add, well, I'll get to that in a minute. What happened was COVID. And so at the beginning of 2020, when we canceled all of the capital projects, that the police station project was canceled. And when it came back, I think, Chip, you can correct me, when it came back in 2021, it wasn't a $1 million project anymore. It was a $1.5 million project, I think, and I might be slightly misremembering these numbers. And a year later, when it came back, when we were doing next year's budget, 6 months later, I think it was approved in the middle of a budget cycle, it came back and it was a $2 million project or $2.25 million project. And a year later, when it came back, it was a $3.5 million project. And that was the point, you know, at which I basically had a conversation with the mayor and pulled the plug on the project. So for those of you that need someone to blame for that project, the Casavan project being canceled, you can talk to me, because that's my fault. That's my responsibility. And what, you know, why I did that was it was clear when the price of the project kept going up, and it was not really clear what the scope was, that it was a project in trouble, because the project actually had no definition to it. It was a project that a bunch of people wanted. You know, there was stuff that Mayor Dallas wanted. There were room for lawyers in the first project, is, you know, back in 2017. And it was all over the map, and it was a bad project. It was a terrible project. And what happened when we canceled that project, when Dave and I and the council sort of canceled that project, was we took a step in the right direction. And we had a council conversation about it. And a couple months later, we came back and we hired Indigo, Mr. Hammond's firm. We did a public process. We asked for submissions from qualified architects who had done police stations before. There was no design for police station. There was nothing. We went out and we said, we need someone who can design a police station. This is what we want to do. We want to design a police station. And we went out and we got, I think, 3 submissions, and the council voted, you know, at one of our meetings, the council voted to hire Mr. Hammond. And Mr. Hammond went away and came back with the needs, which I seem to have a problem getting into our agenda. Thanks, Chip. The one page that I keep talking about in the middle that described what the facilities are of a modern police station. And for whatever reason, we have just been unable to sort of comb through that list, you know, that list of requirements. And what happened was Dave and I made a mistake when the first police station, when the first draft of the 3 or 4 areas came back, Dave and I made a mistake. We all make mistakes, of saying that we thought that the best site was the Vista Lobos site. And from the perspective of just building a building and having an easy time doing it, I still think it's the best site. Is it politically the best site? Probably not. My mistake. Take full responsibility for that. So we went through a number of public meetings over the course of 6 months. You know, Andy, who lives right across, Andy Carr, who lives right across the street, came to all of these meetings. I'm a little bit flummoxed by the comments that we haven't had a public process, because we've had 10 public meetings, as everyone has spoken about. And we started going down this process, and we got to the point where Mr. Hammond returned with the requirements, and it was the council's job to decide which of the 2 options we were going to pursue. And there were actually 4 options. One option was to build the police station. There were 2 sort of remote options. They were to build the police station at the Vista Lobos site, build the police station on the north lot of the Sunset Center, which we are talking about for housing, remodel the existing police station, the one that was eventually chosen, and to demolish the current police station and rebuild on the existing site. And, you know, we made a decision. You know, the council made a decision to proceed down the one option path, which was remodel the existing police station. And when Mr. Hammond talks about reusing all that concrete, you know, and maintaining the views of the residents on Torres, and avoiding the massing of having one big building and instead having 2 buildings, those are all things that are found in our design guidelines. Like, we talk about those things all the time. We had lots of conversation about those things when we were talking about the pit. We talked about the size of the building that was going into the pit, and now it's 3 buildings. I mean, we had conversations about interconnected walkways. So Mr. Hammond went away and use the agreement, use the sort of restrictions that the council gave him, and designed a building on the current site that used the existing building. That is not, okay. So what Councilmember Ferlito and I wanted 6 months ago was to do two things in parallel. To do the work with the current building at the same time, and also to investigate doing one of the other options. And the reason that we wanted to do that was so that we would have more information when we arrived at this very spot. So what has happened is we did one analysis, and that analysis hasn't turned out the way that we all hoped that it would. And whether we're talking about, as Councilmember Drumoff talks about, the massing of the building, or whether we're talking about the cost, or whether we're talking about the required use of another space to put the public yard, you know, having another option on the table at this time, at this meeting, would have allowed us to say, oh, here's this thing over here, and here's this thing over there, and have an intelligent conversation, have a good conversation about what we need, and it would refine our thinking in terms of what we are allowed to do, what we should be doing in building a police station. And now we find ourselves in this position of having a police station that, for 5 different reasons, corresponding to the 5 of us up here, doesn't really fit the needs of the community. And so when I was talking to Chip earlier today, the question is like, where do we go from here? Like, what do we do? And when I think of processes, I think the process that we have followed, which was instituted back when, you know, the old project ended. The project, by the way, that was designed by a non-police station architect. So going back to the comments, going back to some of those comments, an architect that didn't know anything about police stations. You know, when I think about the process that we went down is a good standard process. Like, this is just how this stuff works. And I think when I think about where we go from here in terms of getting this project back on track, I think about the 10 steps that we have taken since that day and how many steps backwards we need to go. You know, do we go all the way back to the beginning and hire a different architect because, you know, we don't like what Indigo's produced? Or do we go like 2 steps back instead of 10 steps back? And I really think that one possibility here is to go 2 steps back and to do 2 things. One, change the instructions that we have given Mr. Hammond in terms of what the restrictions are in terms of the project that he has done so far. We gave him, you know, I spoke about this a month ago, you know, the reason the project is out of bounds, like literally out of bounds and too expensive, is we gave him restrictions that he followed according to our design guidelines. But he was hampered by basically the outline of the buildings, and maybe the current outline of the buildings is wrong. You know, we talked about this, I think me and another council member talked about this last time, about having a campus of buildings rather than just 2 big buildings where the sworn officers are here and you know, parking and animal enforcement is over here and you know, public works is over there. However it is that works out. Like, I would trust the architects to do that based on the guidelines that we have. So one possibility, and I hope it would be one possibility of 2 possibilities, would be to loosen up the restrictions that we have given Mr. Hammond, and to go back, look at that spreadsheet in the middle and say, you know, we don't need a firing range. You know, and maybe, you know, when one of the architects was talking about square foot, one of the ways to get the number of square feet down is to just ixnay the firing range, and unfortunately ask our police officers to do their firing work at Laguna Seca. You know, we, as Councilmember Drumoff spoke of, we have a small police department, and we don't need to. Maybe we don't need to have, you know, 2,000 square feet or however big that firing range is to accommodate. You know, something that happens once every 3 months. I don't know the answers to these questions, but I think it's questions like that. Do we need a firing range? Do we need all those spaces for employees that we don't have in public works? I think that those are the questions that will get us to reducing the amount of square feet and allowing us to fit the entirety of the project on the piece of property. And I'll say, I don't, it bothers me a little bit. One of the advantages of moving to Vista Lobos is we wouldn't have had to have swing space. And perhaps when I think back on the decision, the recommendation 18 months ago, I was blinded by the prospect of having to go into swing space. But maybe redesigning the building with slightly different parameters, we can swallow the cost of the swing space and have a more efficient building. And the second thing, I think, and I still think that we need a comparison. I still think that, when we're talking about a $20 million project or a $30 million project, it's penny wise and pound foolish not to spend $100,000 to come up with an alternative and to look at these two things side by side and say, we like this, we like this in this project, we like that in that project. I think we learn things. I think the community, the council and the community will learn things by looking at two projects side by side. And so I still think, as I said 6 months ago, that we should evaluate another project with different restrictions, and whether that's a project on the current site, whether it's a project on Vista Lobos, which was my initial recommendation, which I could, or a project on the current site where we just raise the building and start over. I'd be okay with either one, because I think the exploration of two projects is really valuable and really worthwhile. And I think that is something, we should consider. I want to talk, there's been some talk also about going back to that Casavan design. And I have to say that nothing would depress me more than going back to that. That project, such as it was, had problems from my perspective in 2022 or 2023, whenever it was that we canceled it. And those projects are just waiting, those problems are just waiting to be picked up again right off that shelf. If we pick up those plans, we're gonna pick up all those problems. And I really do not have any interest in going back to that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Chief, can you go? I have a question. I understand the situation there, because as you know, I've been on ride-alongs and I've seen it firsthand. I've also worked in the Public Works building a lot, and it's not good. Let's just leave it at that. You've got some short-term problems, and this project isn't going to happen in a couple months. So let's stop the discussion of what to do to build a building and talk about, if we could, what can we do short-term to eliminate the most dangerous situations that you have in that building. If you go to Monterey or you go to Marina, they've got temporary buildings all over the place. I mean, that's sort of how they operate, because Marina didn't get their projects approved either. So is there a way that we could use some temporary structures or relocate some public works people, more of them over to Vista Lobos, to free up some space in the public works area to make it an evidence room? Or
I think those are all things we can definitely take a look at, Mayor, and I appreciate your comments. I'd have to look at it. I think there are solutions there short term anyway to address some of the emergency needs that we have. I know we are currently looking at better entryways and security systems there,
that's easy.
But the evidence and maybe some sort of a better evidence processing area temporarily while we get to a final decision would be greatly appreciated by my staff.
What do you need to start working on that tomorrow morning?
Council direction, my boss to say go for it.
And give us a resolution. We could pass that pretty quickly.
If I may, Mayor, at one of the, I think it was a January meeting, there was a little bit of critique from the community about, you've spent, maybe it was a chef, I don't remember, but you spent all this money. Why would you invest money into a building that you're going to entirely remodel and potentially demolish? Well, those were essential systems. That was a camera system. that was some computer access. Those were essential. And actually, Mayor, you did a great job because you had a PowerPoint that had a slide that had all the money that we have invested in. And so we can keep going with that. The challenge is that, again, we get that critique. Look, you've spent money on this. So if we have your blessing, we will make those things happen immediately, Mayor. The Dutch door is ridiculous. You know, there's a lot of things that we can do.
Stop talking. You already had me.
Okay.
Make a resolution. I don't think there's anybody in this room right now that wouldn't back us. And if you're saying we don't have the money, we could do a little fundraiser and raise the money to pay for it. But I don't think that's necessary.
No.
I think it's important that we take care of our officers and their safety, and we do it tonight. The building's more complicated, and we're going to continue this discussion, but I want to make sure we take care of that before we leave tonight.
Well, we'll take care of the Mayor. Now that we have your blessing, I'll continue to spend money on the essential safety, health, safety, public welfare items, sir.
Including maybe a temporary building put somewhere to handle some
of the tricky part.
You've got some areas there that just have stuff that we need to, it looks like my garage. So, you know, can we get rid of that stuff and put it in a temporary place and make an evidence room where it is without spending a lot of money? I don't know.
I mean, right now the officers, well, they used to, I mean, you can talk to Officer Johnson, used to process evidence in the hood of their car, which is not safe.
Do that anymore.
No,
and then we had storage somewhere else. We don't want to tell all the bad people
I think
we
we've
store it.
discussed this enough. Do you want to have us, I would love it if all 5 of us at least said we want to do this.
I mean, if we can just say, if there's anyone in opposition to me making safety improvements, you know, tell me now, please.
Where's the money going to come from?
I'll find the money, and if I need more money, I'll come back to you.
Could I ask a question on that? Because I brought this up in January. We have the $3 million, and we've spent, you know, $300,000 on an architect and $50,000 on the consultant. So we have approximately $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Why can't we use that?
We can. That's where we've been spending money out of, ma'am.
Right.
All right.
So if we could just get an accounting of how much is being spent, so we can keep tabs on, you know, what's left.
Yes, ma'am. We'll do.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. You've got your marching orders, Chip.
Chip, as your project manager, could I point out a couple of things?
Sure. So Fred Muir, for everyone's benefit, he's our project manager, and he's kind of like Javier back there. So he's running this project for us. So he's managing the architect, Mr. Hammond, and his team. He's been interfacing with the ad hoc committee, Mr. Barron, and previously Mayor Potter, and then obviously the internal staff team as well. So go ahead, sir.
The council member did an excellent job of kind of describing the system. And if we leave tonight without at least a commitment to make decisions on the very fundamental objectives of this council that the chief laid out in the beginning, you're going to be back here a year from now chasing your tail again. I promise you. Are you going to build a police department that meets the requirements of law, meets current codes, is safe for your police officers, is safe for the public, and up to code? That should actually be a pretty easy policy decision, but it's actually being questioned.
Is it?
I think so, sir, because
are any of the council people questioning that? Are you questioning it?
And if you're not, that's great. If that is the guidance, the next part of the system is to do what the council member said, is go through the system analysis that was dictated by the follow the law. What does a police department need? What are the functions? How do those functions work together? How do you locate them together? The architect got up because he was frustrated because you have not even looked or listened to the presentation that was prepared to explain to you what are the requirements, what are the functions, how are they adjacent to each other, and how are they actually applied in this particular design. Another policy question is, are you building for today's staff?
or are you building for the next 50 years? Now that is a little harder question, but as you know, you have very little land, very expensive land, and you have the opportunity to build a slightly larger space in the public works area that could be public works planning and code enforcement and take care of the decrepit conditions of the offices in City Hall. So there are a number of policy decisions. You got to the design that's before you that is not a design. It is a functions and adjacency. I keep hearing concerns expressed about the design. It's not a design. You haven't gotten that far, and we keep trying to come to a conclusion before you finish the analysis. If you don't finish the analysis, you're working on opinion and guess. And if that's good enough, that's okay. What the architect just put before you is a system to come to an end game that says, do you want a shooting range or not? It sounds like you may not. You may not. But are you looking at the life cycle, or are you looking at the first cost? He will tell you it's going to cost you an arm and a leg in overtime to keep the people qualified. So the city manager has already started with, I'll call it the emergency repairs, but I got to tell you, the emergency repairs go way, way beyond, and if you look in detail at that assessment, go beyond a Dutch door. The ventilating system is flat unsafe.
Fred, I think we all understand that we need to do a serious construction project to bring the building up to code.
Well, what I'm looking for, and again, the chief laid out a couple of questions to you that have not been answered. Do you want to see the assessment and fix the assessment? Just doing what you're about to do, which is to go spend a couple more $100,000 or $1 million, it'd be a slight improvement, but you're not addressing the problem before you.
We're not talking about spending $1 million to do temporary fixes. So we've all studied the proposal, right? And the blueprint, the schematics that have been put forward. Is that true?
Yes.
It's true, you didn't give that presentation, but we've seen it before, I think. We got it in January. I have a question. When were these plans finished, the ones that we presented on January 7th?
We've been trying to get on the agenda since October.
So we could have done this in October, what we're doing tonight.
We could have, but the decision, probably wisely, was to leave it to the next city council and then have the presentations to the city council that essentially go from the beginning to the end, to go through the analysis of, okay, what are the functions?
But we lost 4 months.
At least. Actually, well, okay, you've lost 4 months. You've actually lost since last June, as we have struggled to get before you and actually make the presentation that shows the functions and so on. As was demonstrated by the drawing you saw earlier, it did not reflect a knowledge of the police functions adjacency and how they work. It did not show a whole lot of things that the architect can show you if you want to take the time to look at it. And we're way past time tonight.
Yeah.
But my recommendation to you is we can go ahead and go fix little things, but your electrical system there is on the verge of failure.
No,
you have a report that says the circuit
You're preaching to
breakers
the
are
choir. We've got it. We've got it.
But the choir needs to do something, is all I'm saying, sir.
I agree.
Can I make some comments, Mr. Mayor?
You can.
My first comment is about process. I just feel like this topic is, and it's not directed at you, so feel free to take a seat. This is a complicated question, and I don't think we're going to be able to handle it in kind of a rambling, amorphous, all-in-one discussion. I think we have some key decision points that we need to make, and I almost feel like we as a council, we only get to talk about this up here, right, because of the Brown Act. So, this is our second time talking about it. We're on hour 3 or something. I feel like the key decision points are, And I would literally love to just make a plan and then work our way progressively through whatever we think the key decision points are. In my mind, they are, is it a police department alone that we want to do right now? Or do we want to do the police department and public works? What are the pros and cons of that, right? Obviously, one con is going to be a lot more expensive to do both. One pro is there's probably some cost efficiencies with doing both at the same time. You know, what should we do about the public works yard? What direction should we provide to staff? What functional components are must-haves, nice-to-haves, and stuff that we just don't think that we need? And Nova, I don't know if you're able to pull that document up that Jeff's been talking about. I emailed it to you. It is a PDF.
It's in the,
which one is the title, sir?
Slides 23.
I emailed her the.
But they're not.
I emailed it to her.
There's three. There's three attachments. Go to the attachment.
There's a. That's not the one I want. Okay. There's a clear one.
Sir, can I ask you to answer the one
question?
I'm
not quite done yet. Sorry. Nova, are you able to access that document that I emailed?
You're referencing the document that the police chief put together, sir? Yeah.
This thing that I'll make it bigger?
No. It's a one-pager that Paul did. It's in a...
Do we have it in the package?
It's actually it was in Mr. Malik's presentation, but he had drawn on it and it was very unclear. But that's the document we're looking for. Paul, do you remember what it's
PD
named?
needs final.
Pardon me?
That's the one. No, PD needs final.
It's this one here? Yeah.
There you go. Can we blow that up?
Yeah.
As big as possible. Okay, so this document, I think Jeff is 100% right. He's been talking about this for a while. This is something that we, I think, need to talk about. Okay? It just goes through, and I think the chief did a great job of making it really intelligible, right? Like, a soft interview room, an interview room, a holding cell, locker rooms, it has everything, stuff that you feel like, oh yeah, we really need that, all the way down to parking for the classic vehicle 51 Chevy, right? So what we need to do is, I think, as a group, decide like what goes in this. So I listened to Councilmember Dramoff and I listened to Chrissy Hollenbeck, and I think they raise a good point. Like, I want it to be a small town police department too. I think what we don't have is we need to provide clear direction as to, like, does your vision of a small town police department match up with mine? And the way to do that is to go through this list and decide what is a must-have, what is a nice-to-have, and what is a something we don't want. And that, to me, is really important, because that is going to drive the square footage of the project, which is going to drive the cost of the project. It's going to drive the look of the project. Super important. Another question is, how much are we willing and able to spend on this, right? Folks talked about issuing a bond, which is something I want to talk about as well. We need to size this project and try to gauge how much are we willing to allocate in our operating budget to pay for the debt service for the project, right? And I think you raise a good point, Dale, which is, you can, on a house, you could build a $20,000 fence or you could build a $150,000 fence. They're both a fence, but you tell your designer what you want, right? Is it a renovation or is it a scrape and rebuild? Like, we should be having these discussions, and we'll just go sequentially and say, all right, this is where we're at on this, right? And we can have the discussion, but I think it needs to be a little bit more focused. I mean, obviously we're just getting started, so that's not really a critique. I'm just thinking about the way to sort of move the ball forward. And then what additional design guidance do we want to provide? For me, I think I've heard from Councilmember Dramoff, like, some of us would like it to look like a more traditional, Carmel building, right? Maybe some other people have different ideas, but we should provide that guidance before somebody goes and creates architectural plans. You know, I would love to clean up the view from Torres so that doesn't feel like an afterthought. You know, those are important questions. And then finally, like, who's the architect to take that vision and, you know, get us there? And so that's my process comment. My sort of overall comment is, you know, cities need to have certain public buildings, right? We have a city hall. You know, we have a library. You need offices for municipal employees, right? We have a fire department, you need a police department. Those buildings have a lifespan, like any building. And, you know, then you have to reinvest in the building, or sometimes if the building becomes obsolescent, you have to start over and tear the building down. You know, Andy Carr mentioned that the project needs to be governed by what we can afford. And I actually completely agree with that. And she raised a really important question that in some sense we just haven't really grappled with, despite having all these meetings. You know, $30 to $40 million is approximately our entire annual city budget, right? No city can pay that out of cash flow. There's zero way we'd be able to do that. So obviously you float a bond just like a family would take out a mortgage, right? And you amortize those costs over time. You know, everyone's kind of scared of that top line number, but again, that's not how we're gonna pay for it. And so I think we really need to start thinking about this project, not in terms of the total costs, they're obviously related, but in terms of the projected debt service payments. And so Nova, if you could pull up, I did a little bit of math, sort of back of the envelope, and I created a sensitivity table. And so what I did was, I just assumed a 30-year amortization, 30-year term bond. And I just looked and I was like, hey, how much is a bond going for, you know, in a city like ours? And, you know, caveat emptor, I did this myself before. I don't know if Jamie's actually still here, but, you know, our finance director, you know, verified that this is actually sort of the top end of the interest rate range in her mind. She thinks we could be as low as maybe 350 basis points, so like 3.5%, but topping out at 4.4, so somewhere in there. So I'm in the upper half of her range. And then I said, okay, well, you know, how much do we need to finance? And I just threw out some round numbers. But what you're talking about, toward the higher end of the interest rate range, is an annual debt service payment of $1.7 million, right? Which is high. It's definitely high. And we'd have to cut some stuff and figure out how to make it work. But it's not unmanageable, right? And so I think we need to sort of change the way we're thinking about it. You know, I think everyone's very proud of how little debt we have as a community. And I agree with that, but I also sort of view it a little bit differently, which is, you know, it's normal for cities to have some debt, because cities, like households, right, have certain things that they have to spread over time. Like we have these municipal buildings we have to pay for, and it's impossible to pay for it out of cash flow. You know, the reality is we should have $2 to $3 million in debt service in the budget, right? We don't, and we've been spending all of our, you know, this year it's a $31 million budget. We've been spending all of that money in operating expenses. So we've been living beyond our means, right? Like we are like a family that hasn't been putting any money away for retirement, but spending all the income that we have every year, right? So, you know, it seems to me, my personal take is that what we need to do is, you know, like the lipstick on the pig strategy won't work. I think that's been sort of clearly outlined. When we look at renovating, you know, Jeff articulated this point, and we talked about it last time. When we look at renovating the existing building, I actually think like Mr. Hammond's plan is kind of ingenious, but I also hate it. And the reason is there are so many constraints with trying to use the existing footprint of those buildings. I just don't think it works. I don't think it works for, you know, the look. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a similar cost on a square foot basis and an inferior product. And so to me, Where that leaves me personally is I would just scrape the building and build the municipal buildings that we need. You know, half of Carmel's city employees work in those buildings, right, in these two departments. So I do not want to be profligate. It doesn't need to be gold-plated, right? Like, it does not need to win. Like, the inside of the building can be fine. The outside of the building should be beautiful. But, you know, let's build what we need. Let's build it to last for the next 50 years, like Mayor White said. Let's take out general obligation bonds to pay for it. And then let's reduce spending by the amount that we need to reduce spending so that we can fit it in the budget.
Thanks, Hans. That was pretty good.
It was.
I've kind of been thinking about it the same way. You know, to me, this isn't about the right thing. The right thing to do is significantly remodel or replace these buildings. I mean, that's you know, I came into this meeting tonight with the open question, you know, of is there a cheap and cheerful solution to this? And I've been through the building. I don't think there is. But I've listened to you. I don't think there is. Even if there was, it's not cheap or cheerful. It's going to be expensive. And that's just the reality of the deterioration of these buildings. And it's too bad we are where we are. This very much does come down to the money for me. Hans and I have been appointed to a financial stewardship work group, which some of us call a finance subcommittee. A big piece of what we're trying to do is really just do a better job as counselors, as elected people, of understanding the financial hydraulics of our government, and what's possible. And I think we have to throw into that effort in the next year, not only dealing with the current state and the status quo, but an understanding that we do have a significant capital project in front of us, in addition to the, whatever the number is, $50 to $80 million in deferred maintenance elsewhere. And I believe the $56 million that we use only includes $5 million for the police station, so we already know that that number is grossly underestimated. I really like Hans's idea of and Jeff as well. I think they're the same. We do need to take a step back, and I think what's interesting that Fred, we've hired you to be a project manager, but given your background as a city manager and many other things, you are also an advocate. And as an advocate, I think you naturally start to make decisions that you think are the right decision for the right reasons. And I wonder if we haven't delegated some authority, giving a conversation that we've had recently, to Fred. And I'm not disparaging you in any way, Fred. It's authority we need to take back. And I think the way Hans laid it out is exactly right, that we have to roll up our sleeves and do some work and ask and answer more than 5 questions. And that's going to take some time. But I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and do it tomorrow. And we can do that at 10 in the morning instead of 5 at night, and just have it as a regular course of business. I have no doubt that the city council is ready to do work. It's a really good group of people. But that's the process side of it. The money piece is yes. An answer is we can just do debt. There are other answers. Doug Schmitz gave me a book that I've shared now with Jamie and with Nancy Toomey. Yes, Nancy has it. It's basically the Bible on all the options you have to raise municipal revenue. And yes, floating a bond is one, but there are others in there as well that can be more focused on property taxes. A infrastructure improvement district or a facilities improvement district is one. It's unclear to me which of those can be done if you're a charter city and which ones you can't if you're not a charter city. Also, the voter thresholds on all these things. End of the day, we're going to have to go to the voters for a big chunk of money, and most of these things require a 2/3 majority of the voters, and that's a tall order. So, you know, when you admonish us to just find it and just get it done and be bold, okay, but if we're going to go in that direction, the community's going to have to step up and support us, and that's hard. And a lot of times when we do that, and if we do it without a plan B, chips been there. It's really hard to go backwards. So when we go into this, we have to plan to succeed. Just two data points. One was from Al at the $400 a foot versus $1,200 a foot. It's a data point. I heard it. It concerns me. The other one was from the eco design, presenting a very different option that I thought was clever, and that makes me challenge the design that we've seen so far. But I think that just gets back to Hans's point, that we need to take more careful direction in this project. One thing beyond that is a holistic look at all of our space, because and some of this we can do, and maybe this is part of the short-term solutions, is I know we have room, for example, in the building at Vista Lobos. And I don't know whether that's useful or not, but are there places we can move functions and people within our existing buildings, temporarily or permanently, and just make sure we're looking at the whole portfolio of our real estate, and not try to solve all the problems of Public Works and the police department in just that footprint. Are there other ways to look at it? This was it. Economy, simplicity, and practicality as design guidelines. I took note of that because I think we do need to keep that in our kind of ethos as we're trying to do this, because it can't be perfect. It has to be what's right for Carmel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the comments that everyone made ahead of me, and I'm going to keep mine relatively brief because I've kind of commented along the way. I just want to thank Mr. Safwat Malek for stepping forward with your plans, and Bob, you just took the words right out of me. I wrote it down to economy, simplicity, practicality. That really hit home for me. And when you said that, that's what we're missing in this project, and that's what we need in this project. I would like your design to be in the mix. When I saw it, it rang true to me that it fit Carmel. It was so well thought out. That's something I could envision that could work for us, and I think it would be also much more financially feasible than what is being presented to us. I'm not a fan at all of what we've seen from Indigo, and I frankly don't think we should spend any more money going down that path. I think we need somebody local. I think that matters a lot more because you understand our community and you understand what fits our community. And like I said, your plan, from what I've seen, and this is the first I've seen it, first I've heard of you, but to me, it really rings true and it works for our community. I think it's the whole finance aspect is extremely important, and I know Nancy Toomey has spoken out at so many public comments during our meetings. This is something we need to discuss now, and Hans, I appreciate the numbers you've put forward, and that's a good first step to having the public understand this, because we are talking about a tremendous amount of money. Obviously, we cannot get by with Band-Aid solutions to what we're facing. But this is a tremendous amount of money that we're asking the public, and that's why we have to make absolutely the right decisions, and we have to be frugal. We have to be economical and cost conscious about this. We cannot be lavish. We cannot be extravagant. we have to live within our means. I mean, any household will live within their means. Dale, you mentioned this in the beginning. You know, when you start a project, you have a budget. You don't do sky's the limit, go to town and do everything possible. You live within your means as a household, and we should do that as a city. So I think that's extremely important. And I like the idea of doing something also potentially in phases and stages. We talked about that with the library project, where we don't create chaos for the police officers where they have to work in temporary units up in Vista Lobos. Like, we do something, and Mr. Malik, I believe your plan had that, where you can get it all done in one side or one part of the space, and then they can move in, and so it's less disruptive for everyone, and frankly would probably provide a safer environment for our officers. So I think that's very, very important. So I just think I'd like you to be in the mix somehow as one of our options, and I'd like to pursue what you've proposed, because I was really impressed with your work. So thank you again, sir.
Thank you. So I worked with Hugo to help fund a really innovative project that I think he had a vision for, the Rancho Cañada running track. Is that what it's called?
Community track.
Yeah, and he came to me with a big number. He got a grant, but he very quickly raised, how much was it? $450,000, like from a standing start, right? In a very short period of time. I was at Gateway Center today, and there was a segment on 5 and 6 on KSPW that talked about their courtyard project. And Taya Yanks, she's now the sort of the mayor of Del Mesa, and I sort of came up with the idea. And we thought it was maybe a $100,000 project, and she got a grant for 10, and we started working on it. Before you know it, a family foundation from Fremont brought $200,000 in. Before you know it, they'd raised $300,000. And the project's being constructed right now. It took 2 years to get through Pacific Grove's planning department, but they're building, and it's very exciting. So all these things started with just an idea and no money. We have a Carmel Public Library Foundation, and sometimes I feel like I'm rolling a boulder uphill to try to get that project done, but they're talking about raising $15 to $20 million for a library. That it seems like a lot to me for that project. Jimmy Panetta in July, I think, was it July, when Mayor Potter was on stage with Jimmy Panetta at the chamber event? And on stage, he committed that he would get us money to help us build our police station. I chased him down in the parking lot afterwards, because I had just announced I was running for office, and said, Jimmy, is it real? You could really get us money? How much? I said, 5 million, 6 million? He went, yeah, easy. I said, what do you need? He says, I need shovel-ready plans, and I'll go to work for you. And I said, all right, I don't know if you know this, but I'm running to be mayor, and I plan on bringing you some shovel-ready plans in July. Well, we wasted about 4 months of that, it seems, by not bringing this project up in October. But I don't see any reason why, if this Carmel Public Library Foundation can raise $15 to $20 million for our library, that we can't raise $10, $12 million, including Jimmy helping us, for our police station. It's a big deal, having a good police station in this town. And I also know that location, and we've got a couple architects here, 3 architects here, right? How many other people are 4? Did Mary Ann leave? Do you see any reason why we can't, what we're talking about with Safwad's plan, and even Indigo's plan to some extent, we're building a new building on top of a structure that can support another building, because it was designed that way, if I'm not mistaken. So we are building new construction on land that we own, not a $30 million property at Vista Lobos, potentially. So I don't see why we can't do something, and maybe Indigo has some ideas, and Safwad has some ideas, and Al might have some ideas, but I don't see why we can't build a new police station on top of a building that was designed to hold another building. And we own the land, it's free. And we don't, that's a lot of concrete if you want to recreate that. And concrete is really the worst thing on the planet for climate change. If you study it, it's huge problem. Manufacturing cement is probably the biggest polluter on the planet, so we don't want to do that. I just don't see why we can't do something, and I'm not saying exactly which plan, but we could get to work on that pretty quickly to build something that's practical, that we can raise the money and pay for it without having any debt. Because if we float a bond, Marina tried to do it, right? You watched what happened. They were trying to raise $50 million in their bigger city, and they failed. And I just saw the mayor the other day, but I didn't have a chance to talk to him. You know, how do you regroup after that? So if we go down that path, we're going to go to November, probably better than 50%. It won't get approved. And then where are we? So I don't think that's a good way to go. I loved your presentation though, Hans. I just don't think that's a good way to go. I think we have a lot of smart people in this town that can help us figure out the right plan, and I think we have a lot of wealthy people who will help us finance it. And I'm willing to go help do that. And there's people like Joe are in this room, they'll be willing to help. Do you want to say something, Safwat? Come on up.
I've gone through these plans in 3 minutes. I think you owe the community the benefit of taking a look at what I have presented here in 3 minutes in more details, and I would also suggest you get the police chief and the public works director involved. These plans are done quickly, but they are very well studied, and they include every single item that was on the list, with ample spaces, ample rooms. So there are a lot of room of enhancement. So I'm not really invested in these plans as presented, but you need to take a look at them. I would advise that you arrange for, I know Brown Act and all that stuff, but you arrange for at least to meet with Public Works and police and maybe the planning director. And we can go through the plans in detail so that you get to see how much thought there was in it. That's all.
Thank you. Chip, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that you need to still provide us some direction. I mean, I liked where Mr. Buder was going regarding that table that the chief put together. You know, I'll again reiterate that this is not I think my good friend who I've known for 30 years, Mr. Soroyan, talked about this. This is a purpose, this is a different than building a single family dwelling in Carmel-by-the-Sea. I mean, this is a very specific, purpose-built, secure, 365, 24/7 building. So I bristle obviously a little bit at that. But I like Mr. Buder's idea of going through that needs analysis and seeing if there's a way we can, I don't know, eliminate some of those functions that the police chief, how long have you been doing this, Paul? A couple of years?
Can I stop you there, Chief?
Can do that.
Could you get up? I forgot to do this. Didn't you already do that?
We did, but I'd be happy to sit down and go through it again, and with
But seriously, how much could you take out of there? 5%, 10%, maybe?
Well, I actually heard what you were saying with needs, wants, and then like, do we really need it, or is it something we could do without? There'll be added expense to not have it, but maybe that's the trade-off, right? Is that the trade-off for space? So I think that's the reason why we need to look at it again. So let's look at it and go, legally I have to have this, security-wise I need this, and I'll throw out a range. You can take the range out, which saves you a lot of space. It's less convenient for the police. It's more expensive yearly to have people go to the range and shoot. That's an expense. But if it's all about space, you can reduce the space.
So the range is the one thing that could really cut space.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
But again, need.
Yeah, well, I went through that list. And
Yeah.
I mean, you've already honed it down to the things that you think you need, or you wouldn't have put it there, correct? Okay.
Correct.
That's all I wanted.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I don't see a lot of use in spending a lot of time going through that list personally, because it's been done by Indigo, it's been done by Casavan, it's been done by everybody.
Yes, sir, but as Mr. Delves was saying, we have a new council that hasn't maybe received the direct presentation or been in a position to talk to the chief and say, you know, tell me how much it's going to cost to try, you know, for the officers to go to the range when they have to qualify, and we can put a dollar figure to it. So I'm just being the devil's advocate a little bit.
That I can see, but I'm just talking about the list of rooms. I think that's pretty much vetted.
Can we go back to that, please?
I don't know. I'm not sure we ever, I'm looking at you, Chip, I'm not sure we ever really vetted the list. I mean, I kept bringing it up and bringing it up and bringing it up, and I'm not sure that we ever, there's a list somewhere, and I think it's in the Indigo report, where these rooms actually have spaces assigned to them. Like, you know, like the evidence room is 450 square feet, and I'm just making that up, or whatever it is. And I think it's, I think it would be useful to, you know, think going down the road of, so I don't think we ever did that.
We just spent $300,000 with Indigo. Didn't you do this?
I don't think the council ever vetted the list. And I think also that the notion of having $1,200 a square foot, and, you know, as a multiplier, the number of square feet will give us an idea, you know, as you know, if we're going to do that, as we go down this list, like, look, this is an $80,000 room, or this is a $5,000 room, and I think that would be, I think that would inform the discussion.
So I guess the question is, do you want to do it at all, and do you want to do it tonight, or do you want to continue this special meeting to another special meeting and actually delve into some of these, so you could talk about what a soft interview room is and how many square feet, and, you know, we can marry up this sheet with Indigo's floor area estimate. And the additional benefit, I think, of doing that is because we do have some new people here that haven't been to these meetings before. And I don't want to delay this any more than we have to, believe me, but maybe it's an educational opportunity for the community.
You know, one thing I love about this council is every day, all of us are out doing our research. We can't get together and do it as a group, and I would love to do that because we would do some real damage, but we can't. But everybody is out doing their work all the time. And I think we all need to do that after this meeting.
You know,
there's some things we can do individually, but I personally don't want to keep this meeting going tonight. We just had a long meeting, and I think that a lot of good information's come out of here. We have to continue this quickly, though.
Yeah, so maybe you could take your calendars out, and we could look at, I don't know, next Monday's a holiday, but Planning Commission meets tomorrow, Forest and Beach next Thursday, Mary, correct?
I would like some time. I would like some time to do some research.
Okay.
If we could.
We could look. I'll tell you what. We'll ask Nova to kindly send out a doodle poll for the week of the 24th.
Okay. That's good.
We are meeting on the 27th. So we're meeting on Thursday the 27th to do priority setting.
That's okay. Those meetings go pretty quick. That's good. Let's do that.
Hans,
Okay.
I think you were talking beyond this list.
Yeah, I sort of was thinking about a sort of and I'm okay if it's a different process, but I would love to, and maybe it doesn't have to happen in this meeting, maybe it's our next meeting, and maybe folks give some thought to it ahead of time, but like, I would love to get to a more defined process. You know, we've had the amorphous all-in-one meeting.
Totally get it.
Whatever, 5 times now, you know, and I think it's time to have a more disciplined, you know, approach. This is our first amorphous all-in-one meeting, which is, you know, probably fine. And then the only point I would make on this one subset of that process, like choosing what's in it, is because I have a lot of respect for Councilmember Dramoff, and, you know, she and I probably have similar design sensibilities. She has an issue with the size of the building, and the thing I'm trying to get at is, are there elements of this that we can shrink down? Are there things that can come out? Like they took this list and they came up with a 16,000 square foot building. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, are we comfortable with that? And if we're not, what specifically are we gonna take out? And I don't necessarily have a dog in that fight. I just think it's a analysis that would be helpful for us.
If we marry up the floor area, then we can do that. You can do that questioning. You know, why do you actually need, 250 square feet for a, I don't know, a soft, pick the topic, and that way we can have that discussion, not in a defensive way, but to justify why it's needed. Because Mr. Malik's, he's 5,000 square feet less than Mr. Hammond. So,
but Mr. Hammond, to be fair to him, he's got Public Works, a lot of space for them. So, which might be required, but it's a different concept.
But having that conversation. So, if it's okay with you, then we'll send out a doodle poll for whatever, however you do it, for the week of February 24th.
And I guess I would, Dale brings up, the mayor brings up a point, Mr. Hammond, Indigo included Public Works. And I think that, Hans brought this up, when he was talking, we've all sort of brought this up, that the project has grown from police station to Public Works. And I think it would be important, I think, to Hans's, comments about process, one thing that I would hope that we might get around to doing would be renaming the project from the police station project to the police station and Public Works project. Like if that's what we're gonna do, then that's what we should call it.
My vision, in Malik's, Safwat's vision, is the planning department could be taken over into the police department with Public Works. So it could be a bigger deal in terms of the city. Okay, we're done with public comment tonight. We're done. Sorry. I just got advice from my legal counsel here. So there's a lot of possibilities on this campus, which is what it was originally intended to be, I believe. So we're sort of following that up. And so great comment. So let's have a follow-up meeting. Thank you, everybody that came, and the people that aren't here, thank you. And especially our officers and the folks who work in that wonderful building. We appreciate your passion, and we're going to take some action. This council's ready to do something, and Chip's ready to figure out what to do with it once we get direction.
This is great, council. Really good discussion.
We're going to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.